Welcome to Season 10 of Purposeful Empathy, a show that is dedicated to amplifying the voices of people from across the globe who understand that the world needs more empathy and are doing something about it. I want to thank all of you for watching. Our first 100 episodes garnered over 20,000 organic views. I couldn't do it without you. Please share, please subscribe, and enjoy the show. Welcome to a new episode of Purposeful Empathy. Today I am joined by Andrew Newman, who is an award-winning author and founder of ConsciousStories.com, a series of bedtime stories intentionally crafted to support the parent-child connection in the last 20 minutes of the day. His professional background includes deep training in therapeutic healing work and mindfulness. And in his emerging work, which he calls Creativity First, Andrew explores the cyclical nature of creativity and how self-expression is essential to healing. Andrew is a TEDx speaker, a featured expert on Mindvalley's Little Humans, and has been an opening speaker for Deepak Chopra and a keynote speaker at Dr. Becky Bailey's Conscious Discipline Conference. I'm so excited to have you on the show. Welcome, Andrew.
Anita, thank you. This is wonderful. I'm very excited for us to be exploring empathy.
Well, your books breathe empathy, and I'm going to just share with our audience that can see the visuals. I've got 3 of them, right? So We Are Circle People helps children find connection and belonging in the modern day village. Here, if you could see that. And the illustrations are so beautiful. And then you've got here The Hug That Got Stuck, which is teaching children to access their hearts and get free from their sticky thoughts. And then I have a third one, The Elephant Who Tried to Tiptoe, which reminds children to be their true selves and to love their bodies that they're in. Oh, your work is so fantastic. I'm so delighted to have this conversation with you.
Yeah, thank you. It's always, as a creative, putting something out into the world and just feeling the warmth of this moment and your excitement to meet and welcoming it back. It's like, it feels good. It feels good for me. It's like often I'm here dreaming up another story, but the connection, which I know is the heart of what you're about and your empathy and the relating. It's like, this is so much of what drives me and what I've been trying to heal and resolve for myself and to put out into the world. So I'm delighted to join you in a moment of deep conversation.
Super. And not only do I really respect the work that you do as somebody who's spent like a decade looking at empathy and the power of empathy for our relationships and our world, but I also have a 6.5-year-old. So I've been reading these books to my daughter, and I know what they stir up and the kinds of conversations and the kind of chit chats and snuggles that I've had with her as a result of your book. So I look forward to sharing your work with people on this side of the pond. I know you're from England, I take it?
South Africa originally.
Oh, South Africa. Oh, sorry, I got the accent wrong. And now you're in Hawaii, which is wonderful. And I just want to bring Canadians and North Americans to your work in droves, because it is such it's just delicious. So I'm going to start with your TED Talk, and we'll make sure to include the link in the description of this episode below. It's called Why the Last 20 Minutes of the Day Matter. And you speak about the impact of love and care on the nervous system and how it regulates in kids. So can you share more about why those 20 minutes are so special?
Yeah, I started geeking out on them because I think one of the biggest things I noticed was that if I did something intentional in my last 20 minutes of the day, my quality of sleep was different, and the way that I woke up the next morning was different. So on the nights where I maybe meditated, maybe did some gratitude journaling, I just woke up feeling better resourced. And I was curious about this. And I had been studying deeply around developmental trauma, around how in the first young years of our life, we have these experiences that begin to shape our belief systems about whether or not we feel safe in the world, safe to express and to be ourselves. And as I looked closer and closer at it, I was like, okay, so we all have difficult moments, and our brains all function as safety mechanisms to try and give us strategies. But when exactly are those strategies formed? It's like, if I have a tough moment on the playground when I'm 5 years old, when does the behavior in me form that I no longer want to go to the playground? And what is the journey? Because it doesn't feel like it's a straight light switch. It's not like an on and off, but that actually our body's doing some metabolizing. And over the years, as an adult, I was learning for the first time in my life what a restorative healing experience was. And I was going, oh, I literally didn't have any of those in childhood. I had loving parents, but they weren't skillful to come in and go, it looks like you had a hard time. Let me sit with you and help you metabolize it through your system so you don't have to carry it. So by the time I was in my 30s, I was carrying a lot because none of the metabolizing had happened. And I realized that for our little ones, we really want to help them as fast and as soon as possible for them to make sense of what their experience is so that they don't have to carry it like I had to carry it. And that there was an opportunity to metabolize the day just before sleep. That if we applied that time intentionally, our kids wouldn't go to sleep carrying as much hardship from their challenging moments that were confusing for them. Their brain wouldn't have to solidify behavior strategies in order to keep them safe, because they would have already had safety come back into the system through the presence and the love of a parent showing up alongside them and listening to what it was that they were working their way through.
Oh, I love that. So the design of the book is to really help kids metabolize their feelings on purpose before they go to sleep, so they have a deep sleep and they wake up refreshed, and they're not carrying these like feeling hangovers, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Wonderful. Okay, so I know that in all of your books you start with what's called a snuggle breathing meditation. So let's find out what this is. Why do you do it? And yeah.
Well, how about we just do it? Because I would love you to feel it through your system.
Yeah.
And we can do it here together, and then we'll do story time, and we'll see how that transitions in.
Okay.
The snuggle breathing meditation is a transition tool, and you don't need to have my books to use it. I use it in my company. We use it to start company meetings. Like when talking, it doesn't matter what we're talking about. We go like, let's do a little breathe, and everyone's like, okay. So just notice how this feels for yourself and your body as if you join us, and everyone who's listening joins, come along for this. So like the air hostess will, air steward will say, put your own oxygen mask on first. The first breath is for you. So just taking the attitude of I breathe for me. Breathing in, I breathe for me. Sometimes we have to slow down and do that twice. Particularly, I notice the mums really like this, because it's like, wow, I got a little lost in all of the care I need to do for these kids. Like, I breathe for me. I have permission to breathe for me. It's okay to do that. Yes, please. Thank you. I breathe for me. And now I know you are here, so I breathe for you. Just take a second breath. Together, we create us, and so I breathe for us. And then all of this happens in a certain context. So I breathe for all that surrounds us. I'm like, I've gone really quiet. How's this for you?
I'm very touched.
Yeah.
I'm very touched by this. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you feel me more?
Yeah. And
Can
I can feel more empathy for you too. As a living being, with your own circumstances and needs and wants and dreams and
yeah. we've done all sorts of things from the brain perspective in these 4 breaths. You know, we've attuned, we've regulated, we've synchronized. If there's brain mirroring opportunity, it will happen better now. We've each calmed down and we've done it together. So I mean, there's families around the world doing this at Storytime. I can't tell you how excited I am that we have these thousands of families all around the world engaged in this, and it's starting to come back to me. I had a little moment where I was babysitting a 6-year-old who had been 3 when I was first starting with the books, and I was imagining the snuggle breathe, and we're making it, and this little one was my practice, and they were like, there were times when they were like, I don't want to do the breathing, just read the story. And I'm like, you know what, I need it for me, so you don't have to do it, I'm just going to do it. And then that's then trying to hold their breath, you know, whilst I was doing the breathing. It'd be this like, I'm not going to breathe. And I was like, okay. And then there I was 3 years later, and I was babysitting, and I was having a sad day, and they knew it. And I said, I'm feeling quite sad. And I said, are you going to cry again? And I said, you know, I might cry. And there was this little hand that reached out to me that said, hey, let's do that thing we do at the start of your stories. I was like cried, that coming back to me from such a young heart was this knowing that this was going to be a gift to me, and it was going to reach me and touch me and offer me empathy. And I was like,
it's really like an on-ramp ritual to slow down the day, to connect, like you said, all the attuning, and it allows the transition to a sweet place. You know, it really does. It really does. So you open all your books that way. So why don't we enjoy one of your books right now, if you'll indulge?
I would love to. Children of all ages, gather, it's story time. We are going to do The Little Brain People. And I'm going to put it up on the screen for all who want to share, but if you can also just listen along. Okay. The Little Brain People is dedicated to all who think. And we did just do that beautiful snuggle breathing. Here it is for you on the beginning of each story. Let's go into story time. Once upon a time, on a very ordinary day, deep in the center of a very ordinary brain, a scary thing happened. Dun, 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 dun. Deep in the center of this brain lived the little brain people. Hello, little brain people. I can look at them running backwards and forwards through the brain. Dopamine was very good at solving puzzling problems and making challenging choices. His twin sister, serotonin, was best at growing feelings of love, joy, and happiness. On most days, you could see the twins happily relaxing in the front of the brain, but not on this day. On this day, there was a problem. Uh-oh. A loud clattering bang gave serotonin and dopamine a fright, a very big fright. Ah! Yelled serotonin, curling up in a ball, whimpering. The world is falling on our heads, shouted dopamine, running to hit the panic button. Everything's going red. Cousin Adrenaline jumped into action, bursting from his security watchtower, barking instructions. Danger, danger, danger. It's not safe. It's not safe. It's not safe. The echoing screams of frightened little brain people filled all the pathways with worry and fear as everyone braced for lockdown. In the cloud of chaos, serotonin and dopamine collided and started fighting for no good reason. Oh dear. Totally overwhelmed, the whole brain, just froze. Luckily, Auntie Oxytocin had missed all the drama. She'd been sitting on the potty. Whoa, what happened here? She said, her teeth chattering. She paused, breathing calmly, wondering how to help her panicked frozen friends. They must be having a yucky brain moment, said Oxytocin. I know what to do. She walked to the front of the brain and gently touched the all-clear reset button. Beautiful music played as Oxytocin's calming voice flowed through all the frozen pathways. You are safe, you are safe, you are safe. Ah, sighed serotonin and dopamine, taking deep breaths while wiggling their fingers and toes. Little wiggle our fingers and toes. Oh well, huffed Adrenaline as he sulked back to the watchtower, knowing that his job was done. The twins chatted happily as they returned to the front of the brain. That was scary, said Serotonin. I'm sorry I got mad at you. I feel happy again. I'm sorry too, replied Dopamine. That was confusing for me. I'm glad I can think clearly now. That night, the twins snuggled together with their family of little brain people, grateful to be feeling safe and loved once again. They all got the best night's sleep ever.
It's beautiful. Now, tell me, when you read this story to children, what are some of the experiences you've had? What are some of the conversations? How do they sound?
Well, what's interesting about talking about the brain is that if we start bringing brain language in with kids at a young age, they pick it up, they learn it, and they adopt it. And if we don't, then they don't. So if there's a certain age on this story, like I've had 3 or 4-year-olds who definitely know where the heart is and definitely know where the hug factory is, but the brain is conceptual. It's not as relatable. So there's a little conceptual jump that we have to educate around and bring them in on. But then we can start using examples of going like, oh, fight, fright, and free. Fight, flight, freeze starts to happen in front of us in the relationship. And you can use this language of going, are you having a yucky brain moment? And they go, oh yeah, I'm having a yucky brain moment. And then, what can we do about that? Well, that's that back page of the book. Each story has its own little activity page. And here we have the brain balance barometer that teaches about being safe and loved, having a yucky brain moment, and what we can do to restore calm. And so if we practice this with our little ones, the sighing loudly, breathing into the belly, stretching and relaxing, playing calm music, yawning and snuggling, these things become they're in their toolbox. It doesn't have to be our toolbox for them, but we get to remind them, and they're self-regulating. They don't like being wound up or tied up any more than we like it when it happens to us. So do find that they're finding their way to create their own calm and take support from us as adults around them to do that in the moment.
I love that, because my daughter, who's 6.5, goes to a school where the arts are prominent, and so they regularly have concerts and they get up on stage, and she's only in grade 1. So I was telling her it's okay if you have butterflies to welcome them, because I still have butterflies when I step into a classroom, and I've been teaching for years. So I said, like, acknowledge them, feel them, say welcome. It's because you care, you want to sing well for everybody, and you're excited. So that, on a somatic level, I'm able to have that conversation. But the yucky brain moment is such a great frame to have, because she could also say that to me, Mama, you have a yucky brain moment. I'll be like,
and
yeah.
she will. That's humbling, isn't it? Right?
If you're enjoying this conversation, I bet you'll love reading my book, Purposeful Empathy, Tapping Our Hidden Superpower for Personal, Organizational, and Social Change. We are living in the era of a massive empathy deficit, but humans are wired to care, and we can become more empathic with practice. And the more you do, the better you'll feel. Please visit your favorite online retailer and order your copy today. So I'm wondering what connection, because I see it, it's very evident to me, but what connection do you see between empathy
and story time reading, and sort of how the two support the other?
Well, as adults and parents, and speaking to the aunts and uncles, and that I'm an uncle to many kids, and it's like I'm always looking for a moment of connection. And that moment when they jump in the car after school and you say, how was your day? You don't get very much from them, right? It's kind of fine. And we have to recognize actually that they're in transition, and they have to unwind from what they've been in before there's a new openness. But bedtime does a curious thing. I don't know if you've noticed how your little one might get chatty in the evening just as you climb into bed.
To stretch it out for nothing less.
But it's more than just stretching it out, because there's connection that's happening in that moment. And I hear from so many parents that they hear things that they didn't know about from their kids. And these stories are written, and part of the activity pages are little conversation starters, so that not only can it be a fun moment together in which there's a value-centric lesson that's just infusing the space. It's giving a language for the home, but the connective piece, there's a fascinating thing that comes. We're often have rank over kids. We're often in front of them. We're taller than them. We're higher than them. When you come into story time, you come into this side-by-side posture, and you go on an adventure together. The book is this thing you do together. Mm-hmm. And because you're together in it, that rank changes and something opens up, which allows you to be an ally and a friend over being the authority that's controlling. And this is a moment it's like I would say, I really don't mind if you don't finish the story because you've started a conversation. Mm. I'm like, please don't prioritize finishing the story over what's happening. Let what's happening be this moment of empathetic connection, of resonance, of like listening, where you get to actively hear what the curiosity is. You get these little insights into the inner world of the person you share the story with. That is just
that's such an important message. Like, I remember interviewing someone many podcasts ago who runs a little mini library. The library is a mobile library, and it goes to different parts of the city. And she's a childhood educator, and she was talking about just the what it means to read to a child. And I did not get the memo until that moment. I really thought you open the book, you start reading it, you might add some nice cute voices, but like, you read the book. The point is to read the book. And she was saying that, they'll ask a question about something, or they'll interrupt you, and you're just like, want to get back to the reading of it. She's like, no. The book it goes to the background. What comes to the foreground is what happens as a result of reading. And that for me was a game changer. And I read differently now. And so you're just reasserting what she said, because I think it's so important as parents, like, especially because we're so busy doing all the time. Our society kind of rigs us that way, that when you're story time reading, the book is just the channel, the vessel through which connection can be made.
And that reference of background and foreground, I find so helpful. Even in an adult conversation, it's working therapeutically with clients. I'm listening to the background through the front door of the foreground, and then inviting it forward so that piece can be seen and heard more. It's really important. And there's always a little clash for me in a social situation where someone applies their agenda to me and doesn't listen to what I just said, but they're like, that take the conversation off in the way they were determined to always go. And I know I do that. I'm also guilty of doing that, but I'll just track it a little bit and go, okay, I thought things were going to go this way. I thought I was going to read the story page by page. I thought I was going to have a conversation about this, but really what you're taking us in a different direction, but there's an opportunity for connection if I put my agenda down and come into the moment and stay present.
And stay present. Yeah. And now my brain is struggling with, I know what I want to ask next, but it's on a different topic. Do I have the right during a podcast to segue?
Well, let me invite you into this from you've got a very rich awareness about empathy. It's your love and your passion. Like, how do you see this affecting empathy?
The decision to move to another topic.
No, the story time, the connection.
So my daughter is now heavily into Harry Potter. And I thought Harry Potter was something that you would read sort of like in your preteens, your tweens maybe, but 6.5 is kind of on the young side. But she got really into it. We watched all the movies, which I found kind of scary and also like a bit confusing, to be honest. But everybody had talked about the books, and a friend of mine, a dear friend of mine, had said, no, she's going to love it. Read with her. She's going to love it. And so as of the beginning of the year, we've been chipping away every 30 minutes, like every night for 30 minutes. And I read about 12 to 14 pages on average. And I think because the book is more advanced conceptually, she interrupts less. So I feel like I'm making headway through the book. But I think I'm still staying in an old model of like, there's a task to read. And it's not, I guess I'm not savoring enough the ritual and the potential of what that ritual could bring. That's what's coming up for me right now.
Yeah, beautiful, savoring. That's wonderful. And what an interesting moment in our conversation, because we've just been talking about having an agenda to go somewhere. And I know that you've got some questions for the podcast, but something else is happening. So how do we stay with that? And what does it feel like as a tension inside of us to actually come into that and go, I'm going to let something go and see what happens.
Yeah. Yeah, because part of me is also thinking I might find this line of questioning fascinating, and I might want to talk about my own experience with my daughter reading, but which listener, like, where's the line where people are like, okay, well, thank you, that was great. And I want people to stay with it because I know there's other rich stuff that we're going to talk about. So there's an interesting dance happening.
Yeah. And the dilemma is relatable. That I can say. We sit here, there's going to be people going, oh, look at them. They're right in the middle of the moment I'm used to being in. And how do I usually do it? And what I'm like, I just push over. It's like, oh no, actually I pause sometimes. So it's like, oh no, yeah. It's, I know that we've got a theme of creativity to explore discussing. And actually this is a very creative moment because when we pause and when we wait, something new emerges and it takes us in a direction that's just exciting. It's like there's a opportunity to surf a wave of something we couldn't see coming. And
yeah, it makes me think of something that happened in my class last week on Wednesday. So I teach social entrepreneurship. The theme this semester is the well-being of children and youth. And we devoted last week's readings to talking about the well-being of children in the global south, in low-income countries. And we watched a video that was produced by CNN that did an expose on an 8-year-old child being sold by her father to this was in Afghanistan and at a refugee camp. And the cameras caught the sale, and the cameras caught the reticence of the girl going off with her new husband, as it were. And after we watched this, they watched it as homework assignment, but we had a conversation about it in class. And one of the questions was, how is it possible that the video cameraman didn't intervene and say, like, I'll pay whatever, I'll take whatever is necessary, like I'll make that money back, like we're not selling this girl, like it's not going to happen. We had a long protracted conversation about poverty and systemic poverty, and I was sensing in my own body how upside down my belly was feeling, to talk about these very, very heavy, complicated conversations about like big injustices. Like a child being married off at 8 years old is a calamity. And I pinned it. I actually said, I just want to ask, is there anyone else in the class that's feeling really uncomfortable in their belly, like about this conversation? And, nearly half the class put up their hand, and I bet you more students had the feeling but didn't show it. And I said, we're all reacting because we're feeling people. We're humans. We're not just like intellectually capable of processing data cognitively, but we feel things. And we ended up having a really big conversation. So I don't know what it is about what you shared just now that made me think about that. But I think the impulse to actually name things as they're happening and provide space for them is actually provides teachable moments.
Right.
Yeah.
And on the simplest level with our little ones, we do active noticing all the time. If we can say, hey, you're smiling, or your shoulders are down, or your head is hanging, it helps them feel seen, and it gives them a moment. It's different to an interpretive moment where I decide for you that you look angry or you look sad. I'm like, I just go right to the surface and say, oh, you're crying. It's like, sometimes we know, if you've cried enough in your life, you'll know that sometimes tears aren't sad. So it's what you did was to enable that, going, here's what's happening in my belly. Is that happening for anybody else?
Yeah, and it makes me think about parenting at a not just at story time, but just the whole idea of not projecting what you're seeing in your child and not judging it. And that's hard to do because we've been conditioned, right? Like I still remember the one and only time that Annika had a full-blown meltdown, how much shame it felt. Like me as a parent that had a child that was having a meltdown, I did not feel self-compassion for myself. I did not feel compassion for my kid. I was just like, how can we make this end, right? And I reflect on that all the time because we do micro things like that with our kids, and what impact does that have? And there's part of me that also kind of struggles with, well, we can't be all empathic all the time and meet our kids where they're at all the time, because like we have to do things, we have to get to school, they have to brush their teeth, like there's a little bit of a struggle. But what is the sweet spot? So like, what do you say about that as somebody who's studied healing, right? That's some part of your background.
Yeah, it's developmental psychology, working with the soma, the body, and energy to restore health and well-being. But it's a great balance, like that you're naming it. It's like how far do we go? Now, one of the skills that is a fabulous resource is Dr. Becky Bailey. She's the creator of a body of work called Conscious Discipline, which is an adult first brain state trauma informed model for education, which is to say, first the teachers and the parents need to learn how to pause, breathe, reset themselves before they step in to support something that's acting out or playing out in the classroom space, the relationship. And so the more we have ourselves and the more tools we've got, and we can just take that little one breath before we yell or before we assert ourselves too strongly, or do power over the little ones. That's helpful every time. I think it's okay to make mistakes. We in fact, we can't avoid them, so let's truly welcome them in, and then also welcome the restorative power that actually comes through this book that we just read, that we model apology in the book, right? They apologize to each other for the things that they did. And if we can learn the skill or practice apologizing once things are over, and just before sleep in the last 20 minutes of the day, you know, actually everything's fine. It doesn't, like, it'll all work out.
I love it. I love it. All right. Andrew, I want to ask you about creativity though, because I know that's your new work, right?
Yeah.
You're a creative person. I'd love to know if that was always the case for you, but I'd also like to maybe explore with you what you see as the connection between creativity and healing, and how you can heal through becoming more creative or exercising your innate creativity.
Anita, I wasn't always creative. When I was 30 years old, I didn't identify as being creative at all. I turned my back on a fourth generation family business. I didn't know which way was up and which way I was going. And it was at that stage that I got into my personal development work, which led me into the healing school environment. And the first 4-year training that I did had creativity as one of their 5 strands in their curriculum. And it gave me an opportunity to begin to find this voice inside of me that, you know, now there's 22 books and conscious stories. It's like, and I had, you know, I had no idea then. So this is just to say that there is a, I want to give hope in this to anybody who's listening who feels like they've lost their creativity, but or it's just below the surface and they can't quite get to it. That's very normal, and it's very much something that you can work with and through and overcome. And what I noticed, I've been comparing therapy, mindfulness, and creativity. I've been looking at those together, and having done years of therapy myself, I noticed that it's about looking in the rearview mirror to see what was behind me that made me how I am today. And it's certainly given me a lot of space. It's been helpful. Mindfulness has just been like an anchor that I've been able to just like anchor again. But then creativity is the only one of the 3 that has had me moving forwards. And it's had me like set sights on something. And there is this little spark or impulse that comes up if you've got an idea, you know, for a book or a song or a meal you're preparing. It's like the idea like wants to bubble up. Your hands want to come into action around it. But the moment that you have an idea, the bigger the idea, the bigger the shouting voices get. And I call them squirrels. I get like, you know, the sticky thoughts that we've seen in the Hug Factory, but like just like, no, Andrew, who needs another artist? Who needs another book? Why bother doing this? You don't know how to do it. And we have to find a way to stay focused on that intention and that creative spark and where it's going to take us, because it will take us to wonderful places if we can stay present with it and let it live a little.
Oh, I love that. I love that. So are you going to put some work out that we can read about that is on that topic?
Yeah, so I'm 60,000 words into a book about the creative cycle. What I want us to be able to know where we are, because it tells us what to do next, or why we are and what to do. So it also normalizes some of these experiences and takes the power away from those naughty thoughts. There is a program called the Creative Huddle, which is a 9-month journey in community with dedicated creative time, psychological understanding of one's own material, and the community that I think that we need to thrive. It's been one of my hardest things, has been the aloneness of creating my vision, and I want to help people bring their work into the world without getting tripped up on aloneness or those thoughts that are derailing them.
Yeah. Oh, wow. So it's kind of falling within the sort of general gist of like the War of Art. Have you read that book? Do you know that book? Yeah.
We're in the territory of the War of Art, Julia Cameron's Artist's Way. It is a the model is cyclical, so it's a little bit like a hero's journey in some respect. Although those haven't been my major influences in my life, they're things that are in society and around. And
wonderful. Well, I can't wait for that to come out. I would keep having a conversation with you forever, but we are at the end of our podcast. But I want to ask a final question that I always love to ask my guests when we close the show. And that is, if you can think of a time in your life where you felt someone's empathy on purpose, they were extending empathy on purpose, and what that meant for you.
That's really recent. It's happening all the time for me. I have a long distance relationship, and I went and spent Christmas with my partner, and leaving was very hard. And it brought up a lot of stuff for me that actually wasn't related to the present moment. It was a lot of childhood material that just was like, I was a mess for a moment. And she didn't leave, and she didn't judge. And she came and sat with me, and she checked, like, was it okay did I want touch, or was it better if I just stayed there? Did she want a question? She asked me very skillfully, and no one had quite stayed with me in that way before, in a moment of that flavor. So it became my restorative moment. I felt seen, I felt held, I felt okay to be a mess, which is a really difficult feeling. It's like confusing. And it's just deepened our connection so beautifully, and the trust that I have in me, that I can go to these places and not break the world or the relationship. And in our relationship, it's beautiful. So I'm so like, oh, yes, beautiful.
Well, thank you for sharing that story. I'm so glad I asked. It makes me say again and again and again and again that empathy is the most powerful human emotion, second only to love. And what could we do if we really unleashed our full capacity to empathize? Like, imagine the world and what it would look like. I want to thank you, Andrew. I want to encourage everyone to go to consciousstories.com, pick up a few books. Thank you so much for participating in this conversation, Andrew, from Hawaii, originally from South Africa.
Anita, a great pleasure. And thank you for shining a light on empathy. It's wonderful. And like, for everyone who's been listening, if you've been here and you've been in this conversation and you're a parent, I want to say you're a good enough parent. Please know that. Like, do not be chasing the perfection in parenting. If you're engaged and you're curious and you're open to learn, like, you must be, because you stayed for the conversation already. We know that about you. Well done, and beautiful, and keep going.
Love that ending. Thank you for being here. We'll see you next week at Purposeful.
Thank you for watching another episode of Purposeful Empathy. Remember, this show is dedicated to amplifying the voices of people from across the globe who understand that the world needs more empathy and are doing something about it. If you want to get involved, share this video, subscribe to this channel. See you next week. Thank you so much.